So before we get started with everything, for anyone who hasn't joined us in a chat before, we are the International Association of Trans Bodybuilders and Powerlifters. So we put on competitive and affirming events for trans and non-binary and gender-nonconforming lifters, ideally at some point around the world. But right now we have one event that's based out of Atlanta, Georgia, every year. And if you're interested in competing with us or showing up and watching, the information for tickets is going to be posted on our Instagram. If you want to compete with us, the information on how to sign up is also posted right at the top of our Instagram feed. There's a pinned post right in the middle that shows you step-by-step how to sign up. But most important, regardless of whether you want to compete with us or not, if you sit down during the chat today and you get something out of listening to Zeus talk about their experiences, then we encourage you to become a supporting member of the IATBP, even if you're not an athlete, even if you're not trans. We really, really, really rely on you guys to be able to put on these events, put on this fireside chat, and do all the things that we do for non-binary and trans lifters. So if you're interested, it's only $49 a year. You get a cool free t-shirt. And the information on how to become a member is also on that same post right at the top of our Instagram feed. It tells you step by step how to go on our website and become a member. Did I forget anything, Zufeng? I think that was everything, right?
Yes, that is.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So let's jump right into today's conversation. I'm super stoked. We're going to be talking to Zeus. Zeus, how do you say your last name? I want to make sure I get it right.
Navarrete. So
Navarrete.
Yeah.
Okay. Navarrete. We're going to be talking to Zūs Navarrete today, who identifies as a Queer TransMasc Latine, based out of Sacramento, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, out of Sacramento, living there with your spouse, 2 cats and a husky, which is awesome. Yeah. Huskies are one of my favorite dogs, so I love that. And their name was given to them by their powerlifting coach, which is super cool fun fact.
Yeah.
And they go by they, he pronouns. And in regards to your lifting journey, before we get into it, for everybody to kind of have an idea, your bio basically said that you started training in powerlifting off and on August of 2021, and you just kind of fell in love with that feeling of being strong that so many powerlifters kind of do. And then that led you to competing with the IATBP in October of 2022 last year, and winning first place in our gender-nonconforming non-binary division.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of method, you said that you train conjugate, you squat wide, and you pull conventional.
Yes.
And in your free time, you also do a lot of volunteer work. You work with a local mutual aid collective that offers different resources for unhoused residents in your area. So all of that, we're going to get into all of that probably during this conversation. Because when we were talking about the questions earlier, Siafeng was like, oh, are they a coach? What is conjugate? And I was like, that's like a method of powerlifting. That's like a style of training. So I'm sure we're going to ask about that too.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so first of all, I have to say I'm sorry for my ignorance. I know all these different powerlifting terminologies.
We're not powerlifters, so we don't know all that.
That's totally okay. I'm still very naive. But my coach, like, since he saw the live chat, he was like quizzing. It's like, what is the why do we max effort move? Why do we do max efforts? Why do we do dynamic efforts? I was like, so I know now. I can talk about it now.
Your coach was testing you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, and you also mentioned in your bio that your name Zeus is actually given by your coach, right? Mm-hmm. So I would be very curious to start off our conversation about what gets you into lifting itself and to powerlifting, and how's your relationship like with your coach right now? Yeah, tell us more about those.
Yeah, so I was doing like mutual aid work with my collective beginning of 2020. And, there was it was a very political time then, and I didn't want to be someone who was just physically weak. I wanted to be able to defend myself if anything were to happen, just because of the way that 2020 was in Sacramento. and in all the places that I like to be. So I picked up boxing because I was like, I'm gonna be able to defend myself. And then one of our volunteers in our collective was explaining to me that she's a powerlifter and her husband owns a gym. And I was like, oh, what's powerlifting? Because I had no idea. And she's like, oh, well, we lift heavy weights, we get strong. And I was like, fuck yeah, I want to get strong, And so we go in the gym, and I was going by a more masculine version of my birth middle name. And my coach was like, is it okay if I just call you Zeus? And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds so cool. And so then that's how like I got my name, and we kept working the program. I was not able, I could not squat deep to save my life. I couldn't bench to save my life. I was just so new to lifting. I hadn't lifted weights since high school, and I just kept seeing the numbers increase as I kept training, like the amount of weight I was able to pick up and push out and squat, and I was like, oh, I'm getting strong. And it just kept happening and became routine. And I love it. My coach is like a big brother to me, pretty much. So there, my coach and his wife, his wife is like my very close friend, and we're all very good friends who just happen to go inside their garage and lift weights, pretty
Yeah.
much. And it's fun because uh, just like um, just like older siblings, we butt heads every now and then,
Mm.
but he truly cares about like the longevity of my powerlifting career, and also me just getting strong without getting hurt.
Right.
I mean, that's super cool. I mean, we're gonna talk about more about the, your thinking and also your work, right, in mutual aid works, which I'm very, very curious about. But we will just go back a little bit more about how your lifting journey itself, does that coincide with your let's say your discovery about your gender, so is that something that goes on parallelly, or because you did talk about, you did some lifting in high school, or does your gender or your realization about your gender happens earlier than, your journey in powerlifting?
I mean, you're the only
So
person I know who's had their name given to them by their coach. So
yeah,
there is some sort of like relationship there.
yeah. So like in high school, I was a wrestler. It was like at the time I was the only female wrestler in the sport, which already was very non-binary. Like I'm gonna just be wrestling all these dudes, and I didn't have the language then to understand why I was so interested in all the masculine things that I was doing in high school. I went to college, I still didn't understand the language, and I had already came out as non-binary before I started powerlifting. I was out, I would say, a year, but it was pretty. I was out to only people that I really trusted. And then I started lifting, and I was going by a more masculine version of my middle name that my parents gave me, and it was a lot of people had trouble pronouncing it, and my coach had already understood that I was trans non-binary, and the reason why I was going by this name was because it was more masculine than my given name. And then that's when he said Zeus, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, that's the god of thunder. Like, why not? And all descriptions of Zeus is like this powerful masculine being. And just lifting right now, when I lift with my partner and my coach. It's us three at 4 a.m, 4 times a week.
Wow.
And the camaraderie that we have, it's so affirming, because it's really just like three bros in a gym, and we're just seeing and encouraging each other to get strong. And it is really, I don't feel like I'm not one of them when I'm in there. And it's truly an affirming experience for me. I don't know if I were in another gym with multiple other people, if I would get that experience the way that I do in this like tight circle that we're in, because it's really just like two dudes that understand that I'm a little guy just like them, you know?
I mean, that's very cool because you reminded me of like how people often have difficulties like pronouncing my name, like for instance, right? And so, the name the name Phone, for example, is a name that I create for myself. It's a pen name when I write
Mm-hmm.
poetry. And
Mm-hmm.
then eventually people like just start using it, right? So, and I decided to also keep my birth name, which is actually much more feminine. In a Chinese context, when you hear my name, you immediately associate with a feminine person, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I decided to keep that name. It's also because of this, like, I think in Chinese culture, it's also more like it's important to, your name is almost like, the skin and the body that your
Yeah.
parents give you. So
Yeah.
we have that kind of idea, like, and I love my name. It's just that this name is sometimes being perceived as more feminine, by others. But I think so that actually was very inspiring, right? And the way that your very close kin relationship with your coach, and I think that helps actually builds a lot of confidence, right,
Mm-hmm.
into you doing powerlifting and even thinking about competing. So you say you started really trying to lift, right, in 2020, right, around that time, right? Is it 2020,
2021.
2021?
Yeah.
2021, yeah.
So, is there any reason that, how did you find us, right? Basically. So,
Oh,
how did you
IATBP?
know? Yes, yes. So,
Okay.
how did you know IATBP, and what compels you to say, okay, now I have done practice enough that I decided maybe I should try, competing a little bit?
Yeah, so I want to say the way that I discovered y'all was um Janae Kroc is one of
Mm,
like a big member of your
Yeah.
federation, right?
mm,
And my coach's wife, my friend, had purchased, I think, a t-shirt or a sticker that said just let trans kids lift or something like that.
mm,
And that's how I found you. I saw it on her story and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And she was explaining to me, and I was so naive at the time. I had no knowledge of like the powerlifting community. And this was like, I'm first learning about Janae Kroc and her journey, and then her being a part of IATBP. And it was just so inspiring to me. And I don't want to be competing and deciding, okay, which way do I want to get misgendered, you know?
Yeah.
And so when I saw that IATVP is a place that's truly affirming and is going to respect the way that you identify,
Mhm.
that's when I was like, okay, this is where I want to compete. This is where I want to dedicate my time, and this is where I want to put my dollars, because I want everyone to have an access where they don't have to decide how they're going to be misgendered.
Yeah.
Um, and to just have fun in an environment where you get to be yourself and you get to be with other people that are truly themselves as well.
Mhm.
And when I was talking to my coach, I told my partner, this is how it happened. I told my partner, like, oh, I found this federation. I just paid to be a member. I can't wait to discover more things about it. And so my partner was really excited, told our coach, and my coach sends me this like video message that's like, you're going to do great things. As you're going to do great things as a trans athlete, and we're going to get you numbers that you want to get. And then it was just like this push of like, you're competing. And I was like, wait, I'm competing, you know?
So your coach decided for you that you're
Yeah,
competing,
my
basically.
coach pretty much decided for me. And I was like, okay. And then we just got into the rhythm of preparing myself to compete. That was like 4 months prior to the actual competition. That's when we started really programming myself to compete for the competition, and it was like I had, right after my programming was the 1 year anniversary of me being in the gym, and then like a month later I'm competing.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was so cool because, you know, when you talk about your relationship with your coach and also the, you know, your partner and, you know, that kind of like community, family-like structure, what makes me very jealous as a bodybuilder. Because I would say, like, of course, I feel like a lot of like bodybuilders do have a really good support system, but, you know, you talk about, you know, how like trans and queer friendly your coaches reminds me much of like how it was so difficult for me, for instance, to find a bodybuilding coach who is actually, especially like coming from Hong Kong, like to find a bodybuilding coach that is not transphobic, that is not homophobic, or, you know, have a sense of what transgender actually is. I think that was super, super difficult. And that reminds me much of my first coach, where so he was very good in, you know, putting me into a good like training program and everything else. But then, you know, he has been very, very homophobic and transphobic. And sometimes I had to bear with like some of his very homophobic comments towards other, let's say, gay member at the gym, you know, stuff like that, because I thought, you know, no one else would actually help me because I was different, right? Because I was different, because I was a trans person. Right. And so I had to endure, you know, that kind of like, you know, seemingly transphobic, homophobic, you know, kind of attitude of him from time to time, until I, you know, later realized that I can actually find better coach, you know. So I think that was for you, like for you, I'm just very grateful that you had such a good experiences, right? Especially I feel like, you know, as a bodybuilder, when I look at other sports, I always feel other sports are better. So it's like, you know, you see other people's food and, you know, you always think their food is better. So, you know, one thing that I really noticed, like from my friends who are both bodybuilders and powerlifters, is that, you know, it seems like the powerlifting community itself is just more uplifting and more supportive in general, and that you will cheer for each other's, like, you know, lifting and the numbers that each of you achieve. But in contrast, I do see like bodybuilders, among bodybuilders, there is less of that like community supportive, you know, environment, or even like attitudes, like among like bodybuilders. It seems like there is more competition, you know, among like bodybuilders. So why do you think the powerlifting community itself is like very supportive to one another? And, you know, is that sense of community you know, what draws you into really like, you know, staying and, you know, thinking of, you know, staying and practicing powerlifting?
Yeah, just for context, like in bodybuilding, it's not uncommon for somebody to like feel like they got cheated out of a win. But in powerlifting, you guys will cheer for each other, even if you know the person, if they complete the lift and get the green lights or the white lights or whatever, that they're gonna beat you. Like they're gonna win the meet if they get their lift, but you cheer for them anyway. So like that is such a stark contrast.
Well, Xingfeng, just to go back to what you were saying, my coach is very affirming, but that isn't to say that I don't have to, you know, introduce him to new languages, or correct his speech, or we're not disagreeing with certain aspects. And I want to say that my friend, who's his wife, helps a lot. Helps a lot. Like there are times where we're butting heads and I'm like, you're being an asshole right now. But I think that's part of that, like where he's like an older brother type of thing. Because older brothers can be assholes, you know. But in the same sense, him and many other people that are in the powerlifting community want to just want to see other people lift strong, like lift heavy things. And I think that's where that like camaraderie and cheering is coming from. And I think it's like, I don't know, it's like innate within all of us, where you see someone lift something heavy and we're all like, whoa, that's amazing, because lifting heavy things is like prehistoric, you know? And so I think we're cheering each other on, because if you can put your body through the strain and the exertion, and just like where you're trembling and shaking, and you get the weight up in front of so many people, because you're so vulnerable in that position. You're in front of so many eyes, and people get to see you fail and lose the weight, or like succeed and press the weight. And I think that's where that cheering comes from. Like, you're seeing the exertion of someone do it, and you're watching them do it live, you know? And it's amazing. Like, I don't feel like there's no way to watch that happen and not cheer someone on, you know? Even like with squatting, it's a whole body. I feel like bench, squat, and deadlift, all three of those are full body exercises.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like, I know that a lot of people think that benching is just like with your upper body, but it's a full body exercise on all of them. And on meet day, you put your body to the limit on a squat. You have however many pounds on your back, and you're doing that weight. And then after you're done doing 3 of those, you go to do a bench, and you do the same thing. And after you do 3 of those, you do a deadlift. And a deadlift is so hard when your legs are tired and when your upper body is tired.
Yeah.
And you're just watching these people really put their heart and soul to lift heavy weight, and you get excited and you want them to succeed. And like, even in the gym, when my partner and my coach are going toe to toe against each other, and they're trying to get who's going to do the biggest bench today, they're helping each other make sure, okay, get tight on your legs, get tight on your back, and keep going, because I want to see you succeed. And I see that within everyone in the community. I can't say that like I don't want to say that the entire powerlifting community is as accepting, because
Right.
we've seen it's not like that. But for most of the places that I've been in, we just want to see people lift heavy weight in the ways that they can.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I also think that it's also because like powerlifting itself, and I think it's probably similar to a lot of sports that are, in a sense, more objective, right? In terms of like, you really look into the numbers, it's really about whether you can live it or not, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think bodybuilding, and, you know, alongside with other sports, like, I think especially bodybuilding, where it is, even though we have judging criteria, right? You know, what exactly is symmetry, you know, anyway, right? And symmetry actually changes when you're sitting in different position, you know, looking at the same athlete, right? And, you know, even muscularity, right? Our criteria is like, what the fuck is muscularity?
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, you don't really, in all these, whether it's mainstream competitions or like, you know, small, whatever, like different types of local competitions, you know, the idea about what muscularity, what symmetry, or, you know, what balance is, right? You know, it varies, varies across judges. And varies across judges in different cultural contexts. I would also say, right, you know, a local show in Hong Kong, judging the same judging the same category would be so different than those in America, for instance. And so you need to know, you know, for example, as coaches, you need to know which competition, you know, actually look for more size, and which competition looks for more like conditioning, you know, that kind of stuff. So, and it's very subjective, right? And so it's always, you know, a lot of times it might create controversies about who is the winner or not. And so I think that drives actually more competition among bodybuilders and competitors themselves, in which we don't exactly know what, I love my body, but I don't exactly know whether those are what judges want, right? And so I think that then that kind of lack of transparency leads to, you know, all these competition. So that's what I think, even though I have to also say, like, there are bodybuilding communities that are very, like, they're just very close kin, very, you know, they're very supportive, especially some, like, you know, female bodybuilders community. They are, you know, they have very close, you know, tie with one another, but it doesn't always happen. It's not a general phenomenon. So I think that
Yeah.
was very interesting. Like I hear from so many powerlifting friends that, it's always like, even though you are a total stranger in a powerlifting meet, you would get, cheers from others, and just people were like, really, really want you to succeed, as you said. So I think that was, that is something that, I really attracts me. Then maybe I will try powerlifting one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I know that there are different, like, there's the WRPF, USPA, and IPF federations for powerlifting, and they all have kind of different rules. So, for the IPF, you have like a bench rule, and you can't really arch your back too much. They also have a heel rule. Some other places, it's like you have to go past 90 degrees for your squat, and other places are okay with exactly a 90-degree squat. So I think there's a sense where you have to understand what that federation you're competing under wants.
Like the technique rules for the lifts, right? Okay.
Yeah. There's also like certain federations you can't wrap your knees. You have to use knee sleeves. And in our gym, we like to wrap our knees. So like when I was competing for IATBP, my whole training was wrapping my knees, and then it was like, oh shit, I need knee sleeves. So we went to go buy knee sleeves, and I had to practice a couple to do knee sleeves. But there's that sense of like, if all federations across the board were similar in rules, I think a lot of like there wouldn't be this hierarchy of who's better at what federation they're doing. And I think that may relate in bodybuilding. If rules were across the board, maybe the competition setting and hierarchy wouldn't be as intense.
Yeah, I would say it would be very difficult for bodybuilding to actually get a consensus on, how we judge our physiques, right? Because like my idea of muscularity, my idea of symmetry or balance or whatever you call it is already very different from another person. And people coming from different cultural backgrounds, they have different ideas about what considered as muscular. So I think it's just because of that, first of all, the cultural difference. And a lot of times, like, in an international competition, judges are coming from all over the world, right? So that it could be a little bit more so-called objective, right? And that also creates that kind of inconsistency, right, in terms of how you actually judge. And I think even so, like even if the same group of judges, they change every year on what they actually want. So especially in mainstream competitions. So, I've heard a lot of, especially from women athletes, like they would be like, okay, is my category now looking for more striation on the muscle, or does that look more, they're looking for more size but softer look, and we actually don't know, because like the judges won't say those things explicitly, right? And even so, what is soft, right? Because a common people's understanding of softness is so different from someone who's competing. So I think, for that, I think, bodybuilding itself and some of these sports that rely so much on subjectivity and subjective criteria will never actually get to be entirely objective anyway. So I think, that would always create, some good things and some bad things. But, going back to powerlifting in your community, I think, apart from that, that sense of community that I can always feel from my powerlifting friends, and I can also feel from your short bio that that you actually there is a really strong sense of community and supportiveness within your community. So can you walk us through a little bit? Like, I'm very new to America, and I have been to Sacramento once for participating in a friend of mine bodybuilding competition. So I know it's a pretty small space, a pretty small city. Can you tell us a little bit more about how basically how queer friendly or trans friendly in the Sacramento or even like in the Bay Area look like for you?
Yeah, so in the Sacramento area, I wouldn't there's a lot of gyms here that are open, that have like powerlifting equipment and that are like queer only gyms. Most of the competitions that I've been in here in Sacramento, they're open competitions, which means like in the way that they're categorizing the competition, men and women go at the same time, so they're not separating female lifters and male lifters. But they don't have, again, IATBP is the only one that I know of that has a separate division for gender nonconforming people. And for most open events, you can be on HRT or TRT because they're not testing your drug use if it's a raw open event.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's based off weight class, and you'll be going in as per weight class, and there's like queer people in there, but most of the time I'm not really seeing like a trans femme person being called like, here's for your trans femme award or anything like that here in Sacramento. And I want that to change. Like, I want there to be a space in a competition where people can be themselves to compete. And in the Bay, there's like, it's San Francisco, you know,
right.
So like in October, there's the Bear and Deadlifts event. So anyone can go, and you're basically just deadlifting, and it's a queer event where it's categorized as for bears. Bears are, as we know, muscular, cisgendered males normally. And so like there's queer events there in the Bay where there's like Pool for Pride and stuff like that, which is like Archangel, who you've had on here before, was at that event too. And so there's like queer friendly events, trans friendly events, but nothing like IATBP, that I know of.
That's like a competitive like event basically. Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, walk us through a little bit. I mean, I feel like very formal now, but not like walk us through something. No, like it's just like you know, you mentioned quite a few times that, you know, IATBPs, especially our non-binary or gender non-conforming division, is actually so important, right, for you to be able to be seen in a sense, right, as who you are. So, you know, can you tell us a little bit more about exactly that experience, you know, last year when you compete with us?
Yeah, so I think last year it was so important to me because I was so new to powerlifting. And when you're so new to powerlifting, all you see predominantly is white cis people. And I'm not that. So I wanted to be somewhere where I could be brown, be trans, be queer, and be celebrated. Because I don't feel like that happens really anywhere. Black and brown people specifically are not highlighted. When Tamara Walcott, who's a powerlifter, when she pulled 630 pounds, I think,
Epic.
there were it was an epic pull.
Epic.
Like that was a historical pull. And even then, there were so many white cis women that were trying to downplay her success. And I was like, no, it's important for Black and brown people to be celebrated. And it's even more important for Black and brown, trans, and queer people to be celebrated. And I felt like IATBP was a safe place for that, especially in Atlanta, Georgia, which is like, you know, it's a Black and brown queer hotspot. Like, and so I was like so excited to be going to Atlanta, Georgia, to participate in this event and to not have to edit who I am or how I identify. And then be there and also be in an area where I'm seeing like Isla and Sabrina.
I think you got muted there.
Isla and Sabrina, who are trans women, and you know, they're being strong as bitches as they are.
Yeah.
And we get to
Sabrina's
see
squat was like the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
that was the lowest squat I've ever seen.
In like
so
Crocs
tall.
or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like that was amazing. And we get to see all these people live their truth. Obviously it was a small event. We had, I think, six lifters.
Yeah, it was like 6 or 7 lifters. Yeah.
Yeah. And but we get to see all these people living their true selves, being true to who they want to be, and on top of that, being comfortable with pulling all this weight and being vulnerable in front of everyone. All 6 of us.
Yeah. All 6 of you and the live streams. So.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so phenomenal about this federation. And I like, even then I was like, I had to do my own mutual aiding for me to be able to go over there, because I'm in California. Atlanta, Georgia's pretty far. So I was asking my community if they could help me fund for my trip, and thankfully, like, that happened, and I won. Like, how yay, you know? And I just kept reiterating, like, queer and trans people need this, and Black and brown people need it. Like, there needs to be more representation across the board for people like us.
Yeah, I love listening to you talk about like the people that you met there, because I have to manage the social media on event day, and man, you were just posting all about, like, every other minute, like everything that was going on at the meet, and you were like tagging all the other lifters, and I just loved like seeing someone get so excited about building community at the meet. Like, do you still keep in touch with the people that you met there? Like, do you guys talk about it? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we do. So we have like a little chat. We just talk to each other every now and then. So when Isla had her fire chat, she let us know about it. We were all cheering her on.
Hell yeah.
When Tilda had a dyno and deadlifts competition a couple months ago, where they pulled, I think they exceeded their PR in the competition, and we were like excited for them. Squee also had a powerlifting event that just happened, so we're still in contact with each other, and we're still cheering each other on. Sabrina was gonna do I think a boxing event too, and we were very excited for that. So we're just like, I don't know, I just like want these connections.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to highlight, because people really don't consider one of the significant things that the IATBP does is like create these communities of competitive trans lifters like that you might not otherwise have. And so I love that you guys all like tapped into that and stayed connected with each other, because that's such a huge pillar of what we do. We're trying to build community. So I just love that you guys are still in contact with each other and cheering each other on since the competition. That's so awesome.
And I especially love how the community building itself is not something that we force you to do.
Right.
So it's like, obvious, like, I mean, it's very important, right? That kind of like organic, kind of community forming. And I especially love that you mentioned a lot about at the beginning, you talk about how you were, volunteer. You were always also volunteering with some mutual aid collectives, but you were also, getting probably benefits from all these, like, mutual aids framework, right? And I think it's so important right now thinking about, what transformative politics or, especially transformative trans politics should look like, right? So it should be, like, for me, it's like I'm very supportive about that kind of mutual aid framework that you actually rely not the state, right, or, the government or whatever, that to provide us, right? Of course, we have to fight for that. But at the same time, building that sort of like, community within ourselves, right, within our own communities is so crucial, not only for survival, but for thriving, right? Because a lot of times I think mutual aid framework emphasize and highlight on, the need of survival, which I think is very important. But, we also need to thrive, right? Not just survive. So I think, that was exactly your experience of that. Yeah. And I mean, turning something, I mean, we talk about the state, the government, whatever, we can critique them.
Yeah.
Well, that's my
Hours
job,
on that.
you know, as my job, you know, as an academic too. But I was like, you know, and, you know, your experiences also makes me think a lot about, you know, the whole political situation in America right now, where we have like powerlifting federations, where we all know USAPL, for instance, do have like categories like the, what they call the MX division, right? Yeah, for powerlifters, right? So what do you think of all these different, you know, divisions of like, you know, a separate category for trans non-binary folks in some of these federations, and how might that similar or differ from, you know, the experience that you have at IATBP?
Well, if I'm being very honest,
Yeah,
I
please
don't
do.
really know.
Yeah, be honest.
I don't really know much about the MX division. I know that USPL is, the way that they're going about, the way I feel they're going about it is, okay, we're giving you this so you guys can shut the fuck up. That's how it's coming across, you know?
That's the vibe.
Yeah, where IATBP, we have different divisions and we have different categories for individuals. Me saying we. Y'all have different
It's okay.
categories.
Once you like engage with us, it's a we now. You're like a part of it. So
Yeah, they have different divisions and different categories for folks so that they can be in a group where they identify. And I feel like that's the right way to do it, because you have to be able to, in a sense, place people where they need to be met, you know?
yeah.
In a way where you're coming across as, we're doing this together, where USPL is like, here's your bone, shut up, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the right approach. I think the approach would be communicating with trans lifters, and asking trans lifters, and maybe working with trans lifters on how to structure this so that it's truly affirming and it's really beneficial for trans athletes, rather than a cis person deciding what to do so that trans people can leave them alone.
Yeah.
I think that's very true. Like, I'm very skeptical of that kind of, you know, a separate trans or whatever you call it division, right? Without, especially when you are forcing, I think the best way is to have everyone, you know, decide which category they should go to. Like, trans women should be able to go to the women's category if that's what they want. You know, it's not like forcing every trans and non-binary folk, you know, and also we're forcing people to be visible in a sense where then a lot of times, you know, people they pass, right? And they want to be seen like, say, as a man or as a woman in the society. But this type of division, you know, actually, whether it's directly or indirectly, they actually forces this group of like trans non-binary people, population, into a separate group, right? So that we can better manage them, right? And not to say a lot of these, like, I just take USAPL again as an example, because the most well-known example, you know, competitions like, you know, I mean, federations that create that kind of division do not actually care enough to create, let's say, a professional track for, you know, this division. And so it just become, a local show where we're open, you know, to trans non-binary or, you know, gender non-conforming folks. But then they are not, you know, and we are not creating a system for them to have this opportunity to succeed as a, let's say, a professional powerlifter, right, in the federation. So I think that is, you know, something that I'm really, really skeptical about. And thanks for also pointing out that, right? So we shouldn't be letting cis people to, you know, to decide, you know, a category like that entirely. I think it should be much more collaboration, you know, between cis and trans people, especially in deciding something that important.
Yeah.
I think Nat has a question for you.
Wait, what?
Yes, that question you talk about expanding IATBP to have other powerlifting meets in other.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, we kind of talked a little bit about your community in Sacramento up there, and I mean, other people won't know this because it's pretty much just like me, Zeus, Sufeng, and Bucky who know this. But yeah, like a lot of people come to me all the time being like, when are you going to have an IATBP competition here, there, everywhere? And then they'll even be like, oh yeah, I'd love to put one on. And then like I never hear back from them. And I think Zeus, you were the first person that you came up to me at the event and you were like, how do I do this in California? Like, what do I need to do? And then you actually like followed up with me knowing that like I just have a million things on my plate so I don't respond quickly, but like you were like, no, this needs to happen. I want to make this happen. And so right now we're kind of hypothetically discussing the possibility of having a meet in California that's under the IATBP, name. And if that were to happen, that would be great. Like we're trying to get everything together to make that happen. But what I'm curious about is like what kind of at the event, what made you like feel compelled to be like, how do I make this happen where I live? And what was so important to you about that event that like you had to do that?
I think first it was like, for me it was, if I was lucky enough to have a community to, surround me to kind of finance my trip to Atlanta, Georgia, so that I can compete with this, I'm sure I'm not the only one, especially when at the event, then I was like, oh, Tilda's from California, Squeeze from Denver. We're all
we get a lot of like
yeah.
Western Coast people there.
Yeah, and I was like, so we're all near California. Let's make this happen, Let's not have to travel, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people who just simply don't have the financial support to get out of state to do something like this, let alone like drive maybe. And I just feel like my mind was, there's folks out there that don't have, like the financial support, that want to do this kind of thing. Let's do this kind of thing in an area where they can go to, especially after seeing that a lot of the folks there, I think like half of the folks there were from the West Coast. So if half of us are here from the West Coast, that means that, I don't know, like if there's one person asking a question, there's 10 people wanting the same question that I couldn't ask, So if there's 3 of us here, there's probably like 30 of us that want to do it in California that just don't have the access to it. And if we bring the access to the people, then they can,
Right.
And I think that's where I was going. I was like, we need to bring this to the people.
And we're so grateful with like, with that kind of like attitude and determination to bring in, competitions from the South, right, to the West Coast. And I mean, as someone who always think that, the West Coast is, much more liberal, free, in terms of more like trans and queer friendly, I was kind of surprised that they don't really have a powerlifting meet that specifically have, categories like, the categories that we have right now. Yeah. So I think it's so important for you, and of course, collaborating with us to bring in, right, that thought, right, that we can actually do things differently, slightly differently, that actually enables everyone to be able to just lift and be themselves and thrive. And I think that's so important. And thank you so much for, really substantially doing work on that, because, it's so easy to talk about it, right? But really, doing that substantial work, it needs a lot of effort. So, we are very grateful for that. And, thinking about competing and stuff like that, how is your powerlifting journey looks like right now to you? Are you gonna compete soon? Are you gonna compete with us anytime sooner? Or are you aspire to compete in other federations or in other, powerlifting meets?
Well, I think when I was discussing, I was asking a couple gyms if they'd be open to holding an IATBP meet, and one of the gym owners said that he knew of like 2 other LGBTQ federations in California that have meets available to them.
Mm.
But as far as I know, they don't really have the classifications set the way that IATBP has them. And that's where I feel comfortable. And I may be limiting myself by choosing to only compete at IATBP, but I'm okay with that as long as I'm validated, if that makes sense. I'm not competing this year just because it's in November, which is so close to like Thanksgiving, and that's when I usually see my family. And so like the travel time just wouldn't work for me. But I do have plans to compete again at IATBP, and I just like I don't know I was at a deadlift event a couple of weeks ago, and it was really chill. We were just all lifting, it's barbecue and deadlifts. That's what it was called. So we were just deadlifting and eating barbecue, and
that's what bodybuilding can do.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We would die.
And I had a 20-pound PR then at the event, and there was a lot of folks that I'd never talked to before that were coming up to us and saying like, "Wow, that was a really amazing lift, great job," and like I just kind of want that with other queer and trans people, you know, in a space where queer and trans people can feel safe to do those things. And I feel like, and maybe this is just because I'm so naive, that powerlifting doesn't really have, or doesn't really prioritize queer and trans safe spaces anywhere. And so if we can bring that across the nation, that'd be great, you know?
Yeah.
And if we could have that in California, that'd be awesome. And yeah, I don't know. I want to only compete in places that are prioritizing that. And so I think I'm not looking for other federations unless I can find one that kind of is similar to IATBP. And until then, I'm probably only going to compete at IATBP when I can.
Right.
So,
yeah,
like,
I think I'm sorry, go
in
ahead.
California, probably.
No, I think we relate a lot in that sense, because I also had when you were talking about like I don't want to compete somewhere where I have to choose how I get misgendered.
Mm-hmm.
Like I also was a non-binary bodybuilder, and in college I was like, oh, competing would be fun. I wonder if there's a place where I could do that. And I like looked around, and like it just didn't exist.
Yeah.
And even at the IATBP at that point, there wasn't like a non-binary, or gender-nonconforming division. It just said that we could compete with them, but there wasn't like a specific dedicated space for us. And then so I joined the team with the intention of like, we have to create this space because it literally doesn't exist. And I know if I'm thinking about it, there's other people thinking about it. And then the other problem was that I knew that if I joined the team and I helped to create that space, I would probably never get to compete, because this is the only place where I would be able to compete, and I would be on the staff or the board or whatever. And then that's like a conflict of interest. And it was a difficult decision, but I think you and I kind of relate in that way, where I was like, I would rather opt out of being able to compete or compete as much as I could in order to allow other people and create the space to allow other people to be able to compete when I couldn't. Because if I don't do it, I don't know if anyone else is going to do it, because it hasn't happened yet. So I kind of relate to listening to you, where you're like, I might be limiting myself by only competing with the IATBP, but I would rather not put my dollars, my time and energy into federations that don't really care about me. And instead, I'd rather like put all of my spare time and energy where I wouldn't be competing into creating competitions for other non-binary powerlifters to come in and step on stage and get that experience. So I don't think you're limiting yourself. I think you're just like seeing the potential and really putting your time and effort where you feel like it matters and creating that for other people. So I applaud that because I relate a lot.
Yeah, and I would say like I really admire both of your ethics on that, because like for me, I think I take a different stance. For me, I competed in the mainstream as a non-binary person. I competed in the female category, and for me, like I mean, and a lot of people say like, you know, you can definitely compete in the men's right, mainstream competition, and why don't you do that, right? Because you're already socially, you know, passed as a guy, right? And people will often expect that, okay, then, you know, you must be, you know, a trans guy, and, you know, you must be, you know, wanting to compete in the men's or as a man, right? And so there is still a lot of, I think, in mainstream bodybuilding communities, they have some sense of what transgender is, but their sense of what transgender is still pretty limiting to people who are like us, right?
Not very nuanced.
Yes, and they would be like, they don't understand why I have to compete in the females, right? And of course, like if there is potentially in the future, there is other categories available, then, you know, probably I would definitely want to try it. But, you know, given what I observe in mainstream bodybuilding, and I think I take a different stance on, you know, the thinking about competing or, you know, organizing a competition that could allow me that space, right, for other people. I think my stance is that, or my position is to really, you know, create something that does not exist within what is existing right now. So like for me, like my goal is to really be able to get to the highest stage, right, in the bodybuilding, like in the bodybuilding rank in mainstream competition, you know, competing in the Olympia, for instance, as a female athlete or as a female category athlete, and then you know, switch to compete in the men's, so that I will be someone that actually can compete both at the highest level. So, I mean, that's the ideal goal. I never really know if I can do that, but yeah, and I think that takes on very, maybe all very obvious, but also kind of subtle kind of statement, you know, on, you know, being a non-binary athlete. There's actually nowhere that we can exist, and so we exist everywhere. So I think that's my mentality there.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I think it's just like different, because we have different life experiences, we just have different like priorities. So like when I first saw your Instagram page and I saw that you were competing in the women's category, I had a lot of admiration for you doing that, because the reason that I didn't feel comfortable competing in a division that wasn't specifically for non-binary athletes is because I didn't feel comfortable dressing that way. Like, especially in bodybuilding, it's very gendered. And so like, if you're going to compete in the female category, like you have to wear a very specific outfit and do a very specific posing. And I was like, that's not happening. And then I already knew I wasn't going to be allowed to compete in the men's because like, I don't have an M gender marker or whatever. Like it was going to be a bunch of limitations there. So I was like, I just can't, like, I just have no ability to do that. But when I see you doing it, I'm like, holy shit, like, I can't believe Sufo has, like, the, you know, the audacity in a good way to, like, dress like that and get on stage. Like, that's so badass, you know, as a trans person. So I think it's totally dependent on just, like, what our priorities are individually in the advocacy for trans people and non-binary people, specifically in sports. But that doesn't mean that they're wrong. We're just we're knocking down different doors, you know, they all matter. So.
And I think that's important, right? I raise up this different way of thinking about how to advance the visibility of trans and non-binary folks. I think both ways are so, I mean, even more multiple ways, right, are actually very essential. Each way would actually help reach that goal, right, of giving that visibility and representation, right, of whether trans and non-binary, you know, brown and black people be able to compete, you know, not in the sport itself, just very simply, right? And so I think that's, you know, I just want to say I really admire both of your work. And I think as a concluding question for us, before we see if there is any questions from the audience, is there something that you want to, you know, recommend or let our potential first-time competitors competing in IATBP in November? Is there any tips that you would want to give them? Is there anything you wish you have known, right, before you compete last year with us?
I think the only thing I wish I would have known was the knee wraps rule. Because I was training, because there was nothing in the rule book that said knee wraps were not allowed. And so I was like, I'm gonna go in with my knee wraps, And I think like a week or two beforehand, I was like, maybe I should ask. And so that's when I asked, and it was if Janae was there, then it would have been okay for knee wraps, but because Janae wasn't there, then I needed to use knee sleeves. And I think that's the only, I would say, make sure that all of your equipment that you're going to bring is allowed. And that's pretty much it. It's like, it's so easy going. You're gonna go in there, you're gonna meet people you wish you've met your whole life. You're gonna have a lot of fun. And I think my biggest tip for anyone that's gonna compete is just don't take yourself too seriously, just have fun. Because when you go in and you're like, I think I was taking myself too seriously when I first did my two first squats, because I was so in my head that everything I was doing was wrong, and I could not complete the squat the way that I kept telling myself that I had to. And then on my last one, I was like, if I don't do this, it's over, so fuck it, right? And so I just did it the way that I was like, I'm just going to do it the way that my body tells me to. And then it was like green lights were on, and I think that's it. Just like go to the situation, go to the environment, go to your competition to have fun, because you're going to at the end, no matter what.
I think that's just so great, advice. And we'll definitely look into the rule book again. Well, thank you for that. We'll look into that.
We're human, so we do like sometimes forget to put things in the handbook. Like it just happens. But usually, if there's a question about like equipment or like what you're allowed to use during the meet, first thing is to check the handbook to see if there's anything in there about it, and then if there's nothing in there about it, or if it's like a little bit vague or whatever, then definitely email us, DM us, because maybe we just didn't put it in there and we actually know in our brains like we have that rule, but we didn't write it down. And that gives us the opportunity to correct the handbook and make sure that everything is there. So don't be afraid to like ask us a question, like if you're confused about anything, because we want to make everything as clear as possible for folks. And we can't do that without like the athletes coming to us and being like, hey, so is this allowed? Like, I don't know.
I would also tell everyone that you guys are so easy to talk to. I was talking to Bucky, probably like, I was probably annoying the hell out of Bucky. I was emailing him so much. He was always so easy to talk to. And both of you are every time I message the Instagram or I email, it's so easy to talk to y'all. So I would tell everyone, don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. Just reach out. It'll be fine. Because I know most of us, we get like in our little clamshells, afraid to speak out.
Yeah, well, we're not like the USAPL. Like it's just it's a handful of us just like monitoring our emails and Instagram. So you might not hear from us for like sometimes up to 2 or 3 weeks, and I apologize for that like a lot, but we will respond to you, and we're here for the athletes. Like that's what we're here for. So complaints, concerns, confusion, questions, like we don't care. Like we're here to make it so that you have the best competitive experience possible. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out. And just know that if you don't hear from us from 2 weeks, it doesn't mean that we like are ignoring you or whatever.
And so thank you so much for Zūs, for you to come up with us today, to talk with us and share with your experience with us. And just a reminder that the bodybuilding and the powerlifting meet is going to happen in November. Be a member, of IATBP, and then you will know how to register for all these competitions, and the divisions. Just spread this message to everyone else that you know of who might want to compete in a powerlifting meet or the bodybuilding show itself. And we rely each of your support to be able to make this happen. Because if there are no competitors, there's not going to be a competition or platform, for us to actually be safe and be ourselves. And so, thank you so much again, Zeus, for your really incredible experience and, sharing that experiences with us. And I really hope that, we'll be able to see you in the future or in one of our versions of IATBP in San Francisco or in the Bay Area soon. And also bring in, hopefully that, we can also be able to encourage, folks from the West Coast and from basically everywhere in the United States, right, to actually come to us and compete because, as you said, Atlanta is a very special place, right? We have our really, this long history of civil rights movement. And so I think, it's a perfect place to have a competition like ours, and we need your support. And we need your support, whether it's a financial support or just come and compete with us or be a spectator, just, support our trans and non-binary athletes who will be competing with us. And so again, thank you so much, y'all. Is there anything I need to add, Nat?
No, you got everything. Yeah, thanks for your time, Zeus. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. And have a great afternoon, I hope. I'm in the Eastern time, so I'm in the afternoon. I think you're in the between, right? Between noon and afternoon right now.
Yeah.
We're afternoon. It's like
afternoon.
1 right now.
Oh, okay, okay, that's good. So thank you so much, and we'll talk soon in our next Fireside Chat.
Yeah. Thank you, Zeus.
Okay, well,
bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye.